The oil disaster in Israel's Arava desert. Reports emerging today indicate the amount of crude oil spilled is at least 3 times bigger than initially reported. While the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, is expected to dissolve this evening, the Finance Committee approves last-minute additional funding in millions of dollars to West Bank settlements. Protests continue outside the Greek parliament in Athens as the government pushes ahead with its disputed 2015 budget plan. And Britain's royal couple, Prince William and Kate Middleton, arrive for a first visit in New York City. Good afternoon. This is I-24 News. I'm Michal Divon with the hour's top stories. But first, Russia demands explanations over Israeli airstrikes that were carried out in Syria yesterday after the Syrian government blamed Israel for targeting 2 ammunition depots near Damascus. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesman said that Moscow is deeply concerned over the reports and that the circumstances surrounding the strikes need to be clarified. So far, Israel has not confirmed it carried out the strikes. However, Lebanese media reported today that the targets were Iranian missile systems destined for Hezbollah. And we move to an environmental disaster in southern Israel. The Israeli Ministry for Environment reported today that the amounts of oil leaked last week in the Arava are far greater than initially claimed. The Trans-Israel Pipeline Company first reported 1.5 million liters leaked and fixed the estimate yesterday to no less than 5 million liters of oil. The Ministry of Environment commented on the change of figures, saying it doubted the initial reports. Meanwhile, authorities constructed preemptive dams in order to try and prevent the oil from reaching the Red Sea. A short while ago, Jonathan Regev spoke with Lihi Goldenberg, Director of Economy at the Israeli Union of Environmental Defense.
The information about the damage is one of the problems we have right now, is that nobody knows what the extent of the damage is. As far as we know, they've cleared over 13,000 tons of contaminated soil. We're talking about 7 or 8 kilometers of crude oil that's that began streaming a few days ago and stopped, as we know. Reports of over 5 million liters of crude oil. As you already mentioned, we were talking originally about 1.5 million liters. Now we're talking about 5 million liters. The damage is significant, and that's particularly because of the threats of rain that we have at the moment and the spread of the actual damage. See, there's work going on the ground, but the problem here is regarding lack of information and accountability. First of all, there's no Minister of Environmental Protection at the moment, and the Prime Minister is currently serving as the Minister of Environmental Protection.
And he's quite busy with other stuff, as we know.
And nobody's heard what he has to say about the matter. And the problem is the lack of accountability here and the lack of information coming out of the pipeline company, as you mentioned. These situations, it's not the first time something like this has happened. Similar events happened in 2011 where jet fuel actually streamed. And, nobody's taken worst-case scenarios preparation. Nobody's taken account these kind of events that have happened. And that's the kind of steps that we think are necessary at the moment, taking into account previous events and working forward, as well as obviously recuperating the damage that's happened from this event.
The Israeli parliament, the Knesset, is expected to dissolve today, less than 2 years after it was elected. The recent coalition proved unstable, especially following controversial legislation such as the nationality bill and the failed attempt to agree on next year's budget. Barring unforeseen developments, Israeli citizens will head to the polls in mid-March. Now, as the Knesset is set to dissolve, right-wing lawmakers managed to approve a last-minute additional funding of over 200 million Israeli shekels, or $53 million to West Bank settlements. The move caused a huge stir in the Parliamentary Committee for Finance. 2 parliament members were expelled from the committee after protesting the move, saying it was made to please the committee chairman's electorate. We are now joined on the phone by Israeli Parliament member Dov Hanin of the leftist Hadash Party and one of the 2 parliament members expelled this morning from the Finance Committee. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Hanin.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. So you came out strongly this morning against the budget allocations, even calling it a budget theft. Can you elaborate?
Well, we are speaking about public monies here, and the allowance of public money should be dealt very carefully. It's not, the personal money of the chairman of the Finance Committee. So what I actually ask for is to get explanations to the sums of monies being allocated, the source of these monies, where they come from, and to what exact purposes they are actually allocated. These were very, very concrete and precise questions. The chairman of the committee did not allow me to put forward these questions, to ask these questions. And when I protested, he just threw me out of the session. Now, this is extremely, contrary to the rules of procedures in the Knesset. It's, very bad procedurally, and also, the contents.
Now, Mr. Hanin, let's
Israeli public should be worried that our monies are actually being spent this way.
Mr. Hanin, it's impossible to ignore the timing, almost very cynical timing, you could say. How do you think this move could or would affect welfare? How significant are the next 2 months budget-wise before a new government takes place?
Well, these are, last-minute attempts to get whatever they can from public monies. For example, they took a lot of money from public transport systems. This surely affects, the poor people, the people that do not have private cars, and will not get good solutions of public transportation. So this is a very quick example how this move actually harms Israeli public at large and benefits the settlers and the settlements that are the political agenda of the chairman of Finance Committee, M.K. Slomiansky from the Jewish House.
Well, it's the last day of Parliament, of the Knesset, but a very eventful day. Thank you for being here with us, Mr. Hanin.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Moving to Greece, protests continue outside the parliament in Athens as the government pushed ahead with its disputed 2015 budget plan, protecting growth for a second consecutive year, and ignoring objections from lenders who say Athens is set to miss its deficit forecast. More in this next report.
Thousands rallied against more cuts in wages and pensions. Trade unions opposed plans for more austerity measures after 4 years of reforms that have already reduced Greeks' standard of living, raised unemployment, and increased poverty. Greece's parliament approved next year's budget in the early hours of Monday, with 155 for and 134 against, setting aside a dispute with the European Union and International Monetary Fund lenders who say Athens must accept more austerity to meet budget targets.
I call upon you, ladies and gentlemen of the parliament, to vote for the first balanced budget in decades, and thus make this huge step, this huge symbolic step towards the next day for Greece. And then, immediately, we will move forward with the election of a new president and a constitutional review, which will take out politics of this country out of its quagmire.
The 2015 budget plan promises cuts to crisis-era taxes, as well as higher economic growth next year. This has not stopped thousands of Greeks rallying outside Parliament to protest further cuts in wages and pensions contained inside the budget plan.
It gets worse day by day, and we have seen nothing good come out of these last 5 years. We just keep owing, and we'll just keep on owing for the rest of our lives.
Greece's lenders are demanding 1.7 billion euros in additional measures to hit budget targets next year, but Athens has rejected the demands. Prime Minister Samaras is hoping that ditching the unpopular bailout program will help him win over opposition lawmakers and scrape his government through a presidential vote in February, which could otherwise trigger early elections.
Protests continue in the United States over police brutality. Earlier, a peaceful rally held in Berkeley, California was overtaken by a group vandalizing police cars and stores and briefly shutting a local highway. Police fired tear gas at the crowd of 400 after one group refused to leave a main highway, shutting off the artery between Berkeley and the eastern San Francisco suburbs for 45 minutes. Scenes of looting occurred and police responded by firing tear gas. And that wraps up this news bulletin. For anything else, you can check our website, i24news.tv. You can also find us on Facebook and on Twitter. I'm Michal Divon. Join us back here in just 20 minutes for all the latest breaking news. The oil disaster in Israel's Arava desert. Reports emerging today indicate the amount of crude oil spilled is at least 3 times bigger than initially reported. However, Lebanese media reported today that the targets were Iranian missile systems destined for Hezbollah. And we move to an environmental disaster in southern Israel. The Israeli Ministry for Environment reported today that the amounts of oil leaked last week in the Arava are far greater than initially claimed. While the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, is expected to dissolve this evening, the Finance Committee approves last-minute additional funding in millions of dollars to West Bank settlements. Protests continue outside the Greek parliament in Athens as the government pushes ahead with its disputed 2015 budget plan. The airstrikes that were carried out in Syria yesterday after the Syrian government blamed Israel for targeting 2 ammunition depots near Damascus. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesman said that Moscow is deeply concerned over the reports and that the circumstances surrounding the strikes need to be clarified. So far, Israel has not confirmed it carried out the strikes, however. And Britain's royal couple, Prince William and Kate Middleton, arrived for a first visit in New York City. Good afternoon. This is I-24 News. I'm Michal Divon with the hour's top stories. But first, Russia demands explanations over Israeli